Good evening, my friends. Are you here for another spooky story? Then come on in. Settle in now. For tonight, I have quite the tale to tell. Are you ready? Good. Then let us begin. Childhood. Supposedly, the youngest years of our lives are meant to be times for us to be carefree, to allow our bodies and minds to mature into logic-driven, morally upright, and productive citizens of whatever land we call home. But in a time where the world of make-believe is as true to your nature as reality, when you are still some years away from distinguishing what is rational and what is not, when you do not yet have the physical capabilities to protect yourself, however should you act when you glimpse something that is beyond your comprehension? Tonight, my friends, I will be bringing you a story not of my own telling, but that of an old friend, one of a tiny child who glimpsed something that no child should ever see. So gather round and listen well to Splitting Headache. For those of you who have listened to my Valentine's Day series from this year, then you may recall the name of Terry, a high school friend of mine who also witnessed an omen of good news when her dear friend passed away. Tonight, she returns as the protagonist of a new story. Unlike myself, Terry did not grow up in the Appalachians. In fact, her early life began way up in Michigan, quite a ways away from the forested hills and tall mountains of my home region. When I was staying over at her house one summer afternoon, we began discussing how different houses felt. My mother's house looked nice but felt cold to her the few times she went over, and that was when we even had the air conditioning turned off. Terry's grandmother's house, however, always felt so warm and safe. However, her grandmother's old house in Michigan was very, very different, which is why it is the setting of today's story. When Terry was about 4 or 5, she and her mother had moved in with her mother's parents for a while. Terry didn't really like the place because of how strange it felt, but she did like her grandparents and enjoyed staying with them, at least, until one incident late one evening. Terry had been put to bed in a spare room that was to be her own for the duration of the time that she was there. She wasn't used to being away from her mother, but with assurances that both her mom and her grandparents were in their own rooms right down the hall if she needed anything, Terry was able to settle into bed. Or at least, she tried. For some reason, she just could not sleep that night. It hadn't been the first new place she was in, as her mother enjoyed traveling with her when Terry was young. However, none of the hotel rooms or apartments that she had ever stayed in to that point had ever made her feel so uncomfortable. It was like there was something there, some sort of pressure that made her skin crawl. Terry turned over at one point to face the doorway leading into the hall. The door was wide open. She could still see well due to the light being on at the other end, just in case Terry needed to find her way to the bathroom during the night, until she got used to the layout of the house. She didn't understand why, but Terry found herself staring at the opening for a long time. She wasn't sure why she could not turn away, but something compelled her to keep her eyes affixed on the entryway. It was as if she could feel something about to happen. And she was right. Within moments, she could see the figure of a young girl about her age slowly creep into view. For a moment, all she could see was half the girl's body, because she had just stopped in the hallway without coming all the way into view. The girl just stood there for a few moments, and Terry couldn't figure out for the life of her who she was. Of course, Her grandparents had a lot of friends and a huge family. It was very common for people to stop by at random for a visit. Was this girl a cousin she had yet to meet? Or was she, perhaps, the daughter of one of her grandparents' friends or neighbors? At that age, Terry hardly knew a stranger and was inclined to socialize with just about anyone. And when she saw this girl, she became frozen to the spot with fear. The girl wasn't looking at her, yet Terry found herself wishing she could burrow down into the mattress to get away from her. She couldn't understand why, only that she really, really wanted the girl to go away. She was just about to ease the covers down and pretend she was asleep when the girl took a few steps forward, causing Terry's eyes to nearly bulge from their tiny sockets. Embedded in the back of the girl's head, neatly splitting between her two blonde braids, was a hatchet. As a scream welled up inside of Terry, the girl turned to face her, allowing Terry to see the rivulets of blood spilling down her face, and notice well the dark splotches that had collected on her clothes. Terry squeezed her eyes shut and screamed, clawing her way back toward the headboard of the bed as fast as she could go, all tangled up in her covers. When in moments, her entire family was in the room trying to calm her down. But even after Terry's mother moved her child into her own room to stay with her, Terry could hardly be consoled. In the end, most of Terry's family wrote off Terry's experience as a night terror, perhaps brought on by her sneaking a peek at a movie not suitable for children her age. Of course, Terry hadn't seen any such movies that would have involved hatchets to the head at that age, but she could hardly convince the others of that. After all, no murders or accidents involving children of that age had occurred on the property the entire time they owned it, so why would an apparition like that appear in their home? Of course, the house itself was very old even when they bought it, and who knows what could have happened on the property long before they had it. The rest of the time that Terry was in that house, she refused to go back into that room. Shortly after, her mother got a job in another state, so Terry and her mother moved. They would move to a few more places before eventually settling down in the town where Terry would spend the remainder of her childhood. Up until the day she told me this story, Terry swore that few places she ever stayed in were as bizarre and scary as that little house. And there you have it, my friends. To Terry, if you ever listen to this, I apologize if I got any of the minor details wrong, as it has been years since I heard this story. However, I do wonder if you had any idea about the strange and unexplained things that tend to go down when you move to my hometown. Here's hoping that you never have to deal with anything this scary again. But if you do, you know where to find me. If you enjoyed listening to this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with all of your friends. Don't forget to hit the notification bell too. That way you can get your latest spooky fix the moment it comes out. And if you're feeling generous and want to ensure that I can bring more quality content to you more often, consider pledging $1 over on my Patreon page at patreon.com/phantasmalpoppy. This channel is too small to yet be monetized, and every little bit helps out your humble narrator. Good night, and see you all real soon.